And in Chapter 5, The Hag Gonna Ride You, Gullah Folklore. That sounds interesting.
What time is it?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fridays at 2, it's time to delve in the shelves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fridays at 2, it's time to delve in the shelves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fridays at 2, it's time to delve in the shelves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Fridays at 2, it's time to delve in the shelves.
Peace-filled greetings. Looking for your next interesting thing to read? Welcome to our first episode of Delve in the Shelves. If you're new here, we research and preserve the local and national history of the Underground Railroad movement, its international connections, and its legacy to today's social justice issues. Through our many interactions and programs, such as this one, we empower people of all ages to be agents of change towards an equitable and just society. So what's your next wise move? Hit the subscribe and bell now, so you won't miss what we find next.
And now
let's delve in the shelves. Today we'll see how the water brought us, the story of the Gullah-Speaking people by Muriel Miller Branch. And we'll also take a look at Maine's visible Black history, the first chronicle of its people by H. Price and Gerald E. Talbot.
In The Water That Brought Us, the story of the Gullah-speaking people, the origins of the Gullah language and culture can be traced to the castles and forts along the West African coast where captured Africans awaited transport into slavery in the West Indies and America. This distinctive Creole language and culture later took root and thrived among enslaved Africans in the West Indies and on the isolated seas of South Carolina and Georgia. Muriel Miller Branch presents a portrait of the Gullah people who forged out of the oppressive circumstances of slavery a unique African-American culture. The survival and retention of their language and ancestral customs make the Gullah the most authentic Americans of African descent today.
Oh, I love a good book with pictures and illustrations, and this book has aplenty in 8 beautiful chapters that speak about the Sea Island folks, when times were hard, slavery in the Low Country, beyond freedom, seeking and shouting, Gullah religious traditions, the Hag Gonna Ride You, Gullah folklore. That sounds interesting. Let me take a peek at that. It says, Gullah folklore is like a thick pot of their unique frogmore stew, a special stew made up of succulent shrimp, potatoes, corn on the cob, and hot sausage. The stew, which is still prepared by the residents of St. Helena Island, South Carolina, is named for a small area on the island called Frogmore. It is rich and tantalizing. Gullah folklore is also rich and tantalizing. It bubbles over with humor, originality, flavorful customs, superstitions, and intriguing characters. Gullah tales are heavily spiced with hags, haints, clever rabbits, flying people, witty slaves, and rolling snakes. Together, these characters make up the scrumptious Gullah tales that have been preserved by the keepers of culture and stories the old griots and storytellers such as Janie Hunter, who learned from them from their African ancestors. Oh, I can't wait to get into that chapter.
And so, to sum it all up, The Water That Brought Us. This here book is good for all our wise readers, young and old. There's lots of learning about the story of the Gullah-speaking people. And now, on to the next.
Let's take a look at Maine's visible Black history. The first chronicle of its people by H. Price and Gerald E. Talbot. Says here, Maine's visible Black history marks a new stage in the history of African Americans in Maine and the United States. It is a lavishly illustrated tapestry of personal reminiscences, local, state, and national history that makes us reconsider what we thought we knew. It brings together professional and local historians, genealogists and storytellers, participants and narrators in an accessible, fascinating, and groundbreaking way. All right then. This book has reclaimed a history in danger of being lost forever and shares with us Maine's African American citizens' rightful place in the fabric of the state's long history. These are beautiful comments. I can't wait to delve in. Maine's Visible Black History, the first chronicle of its people. Now let's talk about the great number of pictures and illustrations there are to support all of the rich content there is in this book. And I mean, this book has plenty. But let's see what we got in the contents. Oh, this book goes all into early history, the earliest known history of blacks in Maine, the families and communities in York County, Portland, Mid-Coast, Central Maine, Bangor, Holton, and New Brunswick. Living and working in Maine, the work, religion, education, military and sports, arts and sciences, social change. Yeah, the Underground Railroad, 19th century black speakers, laws and politics and civil rights. Oh yes, and we have the Black Mainers and beyond. Wow, even talking about the proof of presence. Let's look into that. Proof of presence. Documenting the historical presence of blacks in America is far more difficult than it is to document the dominant culture. While black Mainers may have more documentation in public records than Southern blacks, the black population in the South is large and visible. Maine has been described as, quote, the whitest state in the Union, end quote. So although blacks have been here as long as whites, because their numbers have always been comparatively small, they are deemed invisible. As we read on, we see that the newspaper records of blacks in Maine are most difficult to find than those of whites. The most valuable and trusted research on Maine's blacks comes from black families, not public records. The research then builds on photographs, genealogies of black families, scrapbooks, and a growing cadre of historians who save whatever they find about blacks. Now, this book is definitely great for all of our wise researchers who are eager to learn more about Maine's visible black history. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Delve in the Shelves, where each week we introduce our wise audience to fascinating books and other great reading material. Click the description link below for more info on where you can find today's books. Also, how you can help us expand our ever-growing library. Until next time, treat yourself to knowledge and become wise and full of understanding.